The crying woke me at 2 in the morning, soft, muffled, coming from somewhere above my bedroom ceiling. I lay in my childhood bed, staring at the darkness, wondering if I was dreaming. The sound came again, a child crying, in our attic, the attic that had been sealed shut for as long as I could remember. The attic my parents said was just storage, the attic we were never, ever allowed to enter. I was home from college for Thanksgiving break, 20 years old, supposedly an adult. But in that moment, listening to a child cry from a space that should have been empty, I felt like I was 10 again, scared and confused and not understanding the world around me. Except this time, I was old enough to do something about it. My name is Nathan Pierce, and that night, I discovered that everything I thought I knew about my family was a carefully constructed lie. I discovered that I was not an only child. I discovered that I had a younger brother who had been living in our attic for 10 years. And I discovered that my parents, the people who had raised me to value honesty and compassion, were capable of cruelty I could not have imagined. This is the story of how I went from college student to legal guardian overnight. This is the story of finding my brother and fighting to give him the life he deserved. And this is the story of the moment I realized that being an adult means protecting the people who cannot protect themselves, even when it means destroying everything you thought you knew about family. But first, I need to explain how I got to that moment. How 20 years of my life had been built on a foundation of lies, so complete that I never even thought to question it. I was 10 years old when my parents told me my baby brother had died. I remember the day clearly. Mom and Dad sat me down in the living room, both of them with red eyes and serious faces. Mom was holding a blanket, a tiny blue blanket that I had seen in the nursery they had been preparing. "Nathan," Dad had said, his voice heavy, "we have some very sad news. Your baby brother, the one we told you about, he did not make it. He was born too early, and his little body could not survive. We are very sad, and we know you are too." I had cried. I had been excited about being a big brother. I had picked out stuffed animals and helped Mom paint the nursery. And now there would be no baby brother, no one to teach things to, no one to protect. I grieved for a brother I never met. Except that was a lie. All of it. The baby had not died. He had been born, and he was alive, but he was different. He was autistic, and my parents, obsessed with their reputation and their perfect family image, decided that different was not acceptable. So they hid him. They locked him in the attic and told everyone he had died. They told me he had died. For 10 years, they maintained this lie while my brother lived above my head, alone and hidden from the world. I did not know any of this on that Thanksgiving break when I came home from college. I was a sophomore at Boston University, studying psychology, making decent grades, living a normal college life. Home for the holiday meant Mom's cooking and Dad's lectures about my future and the comfortable familiarity of my childhood bedroom. The house looked the same as always. The same furniture, the same family photos on the walls, the same sense of order and respectability that my parents valued so highly. Dad was a corporate lawyer, the kind who wore expensive suits and played golf with judges. Mom was a real estate agent, always impeccably dressed, always concerned with how things looked to the neighbors. Appearances mattered to my parents more than almost anything. Our house was always clean. Our yard was always perfect. Our family Christmas card was always professionally photographed. We were the Pierces, and the Pierces did not have problems or scandals or anything that might make people talk. I should have seen the signs. Looking back, there were so many signs. But when you trust your parents completely, when you have no reason to doubt the fundamental truths of your life, you do not see what is right in front of you. The attic access was in the hallway outside my bedroom. There was a pull-down ladder, but it had been painted shut for as long as I could remember. When I was younger, I had asked about it once. Dad had said it was just storage for old junk, nothing interesting, and that the ladder was stuck and not worth fixing. The topic was closed. The way topics often were in our house when Dad decided something was not up for discussion. I had never thought about it again until that night when I heard crying. I got out of bed and stood in the hallway looking up at the attic door. The crying had stopped, but I knew what I had heard. Someone was up there. A child was up there. In our house. In the sealed attic. My first thought was that maybe a neighbor's kid had somehow gotten into our attic and was stuck. It did not make sense, but it made more sense than any other explanation my brain could produce at 2 a.m. I tried the attic door. It would not budge. The paint had sealed it completely shut. I went downstairs quietly, my heart pounding. I found a screwdriver in the garage and brought it back upstairs. For 10 minutes, I worked at the paint seal around the attic door, chipping away at years of accumulated layers. The house was silent except for the sound of the screwdriver scratching paint. Finally, the seal broke. I pulled down the ladder. It creaked, loud in the quiet house, and I froze, waiting to see if the noise would wake my parents. Their bedroom was at the other end of the house. No sound came from their direction. I climbed the ladder. The attic was dark, but there was a light switch at the top. I flipped it. A bare bulb illuminated the space. What I saw made my stomach turn over. The attic was not storage. It was a living space. There was a twin bed with rumpled sheets, stained and worn, a small plastic table, the kind children use, with a plastic plate that had dried food crusted on it, a plastic cup with a crack down the side, boxes of crackers, the cheap store brand kind, juice boxes stacked in a corner, most of them empty, a bucket in the corner that I realized with horror was being used as a toilet, and from the smell, it had not been emptied recently. The walls were bare insulation in most places. In one corner, someone had tacked up pieces of cardboard, maybe for warmth. There were drawings on the cardboard, crude pictures done in crayon of what looked like a family. A tall man, a woman with long hair, 2 children, one bigger and one smaller. The family I thought we were. The family we had never actually been. And huddled in the far corner, wrapped in a thin blanket that looked like it might have been blue once but was now gray with age and dirt, was a child. A boy, maybe 9 or 10 years old, though he was so thin it was hard to tell. Pale skin that looked like it had not seen sunlight in years. Dark hair, the same color as mine, that hung shaggy and unkempt around his face. Someone had cut it badly, probably with kitchen scissors, leaving it choppy and uneven. He was staring at me with wide, terrified eyes. Not just scared, absolutely terrified, like he was looking at a monster. He was rocking slightly back and forth, a repetitive motion that I would later learn was called stimmying. His hands were flapping at his sides, another motion I did not understand yet. He was wearing pajamas that were far too small. The sleeves ended halfway up his forearms. The pants stopped above his ankles. They were stained with what looked like old food. His feet were bare and dirty. His face was dirty. His fingernails were too long and had dirt caked under them. This was a child who had been living in neglect for a very long time. "Hey," I said softly, my voice shaking. "Hey, it is okay. I am not going to hurt you. My name is Nathan. What is your name?" The boy did not answer. He just kept rocking, kept staring at me with those huge, frightened eyes. His breathing was fast, almost panting. He was on the verge of panic. I took a step closer, moving slowly, trying to be non-threatening. "It is okay. I am just trying to help. Are you hurt? How did you get here? Where did you come from?" No response. The boy's rocking intensified. He made a sound, a whimper deep in his throat, and pressed himself further into the corner. His hands were covering his ears now, like my voice was painful to him. I stopped moving. I did not want to scare him more than he already was. I just stood there, looking at him, trying to process what I was seeing. The attic was maybe 15 feet by 20 feet, not a huge space, but bigger than a prison cell. Except this was worse than a prison cell, because at least prisoners got to go outside, got to see other people, got some kind of human contact. How long had he been up here? Days? Weeks? The condition of the space suggested longer. Much longer. I looked around more carefully. There was a small battery-operated lantern next to the bed, like the kind you use for camping. A stack of coloring books, the pages worn and recolored over and over. A few toy cars, cheap plastic ones. A stuffed rabbit that was so worn and dirty, its original color was impossible to determine. These were the possessions of a child who had been living in this space for a long time. A child who had been hidden away from the world. And then I looked at his face again. Really looked. Past the fear and the dirt and the neglect. And I saw features that were familiar. The shape of his nose, straight and slightly long. The color of his eyes, brown with flecks of gold. The curve of his chin, pointed like mine. The way his ears sat against his head. I was looking at a face that reminded me of my own childhood photos. I was looking at a younger version of the Pierce family features. I was looking at someone who shared my DNA. "Oh my God," I whispered. "You are my brother. You are the baby who was supposed to have died. You are Ethan." The boy, Ethan, did not react to the name, did not react to my words at all, just continued his rocking motion, his hands over his ears, his eyes never leaving my face. Those eyes held so much fear, but underneath the fear, there was something else. A desperate kind of hope, maybe. Or maybe I was projecting what I wanted to see. I heard a sound behind me, heavy footsteps on the ladder. I turned to see my father's head appearing through the attic opening. His face went through a rapid series of changes. Confusion as he tried to figure out what I was doing up here. Horror as he realized I had found Ethan. And then anger, cold and controlled. The kind of anger that was more frightening than yelling. "Nathan," he said, his voice dangerously calm. The voice he used in court when he was about to destroy a witness. "Get down from there. Right now. Dad, there is a child up here. There is a boy living in our attic. Who is he? What the hell is going on?" My voice was shaking. My whole body was shaking. "Get downstairs. Now. We will talk about this in my office." Not a request. A command. "No," I said, surprised by the strength in my own voice despite the shaking. "We will talk about this right here. Right now. Who is this child? Why is there a child locked in our attic?" Dad climbed fully into the attic, his movements deliberate and slow. He was a tall man, 6'2", and in his bathrobe he still managed to look intimidating. He glanced at Ethan in the corner, and his face tightened with something I had never seen before. Disgust, shame, something I could not quite name. "That is Ethan," he said flatly. "Your brother. The one we told you died 10 years ago." The words hung in the air between us. I felt like all the oxygen had been sucked out of the attic. I could not breathe, could not think, could not process what he had just said. My brother who you said died 10 years ago. My brother who you told me was born premature and did not survive. I was speaking slowly, trying to make the words make sense. They did not make sense. Has been living in our attic. This whole time. It is complicated, Nathan. You do not understand the situation. You do not understand what it was like. Then explain it to me, I said, and now I was shaking with fury, not fear. Adrenaline and disbelief and rage were mixing together into something explosive. Explain to me why there is a child locked in our attic. Explain to me why I have a brother I never knew about. Explain to me what the hell is wrong with you. Explain to me how you could do this. Keep your voice down, Dad hissed, glancing toward the attic opening. You will wake your mother. We do not need her getting upset. Good. She should be awake. She should be up here. She should explain this too. She should explain how she could bring food to a child locked in an attic and think that was okay. She should explain how she could lie to me for 10 years. I turned back to look at Ethan. He had his hands clamped over his ears, his eyes squeezed shut, rocking faster now. My yelling was upsetting him. I forced myself to lower my voice, but the anger was still there, burning in my chest. How long has he been up here? I asked quietly. Since he was 6 months old, Dad said, his voice flat and emotionless, the way he spoke about case files and legal precedents. When it became clear that he was not developing normally, when the doctors diagnosed him as autistic, I felt sick, actually physically sick. You have kept him locked in an attic for 10 years because he is autistic? You do not understand. He is not just autistic. He is severely autistic, nonverbal, cannot take care of himself at all, cannot be toilet trained, has meltdowns, screaming fits that last for hours. He is completely dependent, and he is an embarrassment, Nathan. Can you imagine what people would say if they knew? What it would do to my career, to your mother's business, to our family's reputation in this town? An embarrassment, I repeated slowly. You think your son is an embarrassment. I think he is not capable of living a normal life. I think keeping him hidden was the kindest thing for everyone involved, including him. Out there, people would stare. They would judge. They would treat him like he was broken. At least here, he is safe. Safe. I looked around the attic, at the bucket being used as a toilet, at the bare walls except for the child's desperate drawings, at the thin mattress on the floor. You call this safe? You call this kindness? He is living in filth. He has no education, no socialization, no life. How often do you even come up here? Your mother brings him meals 3 times a day. She makes sure he has everything he needs. Everything he needs? I was yelling now, past caring about waking anyone. He needs a family. He needs school. He needs doctors and therapists and human contact. What you are doing is not care. It is imprisonment. It is abuse. Watch your tone, Dad said, his voice hardening. I am still your father. You will show me respect. You lost my respect the moment I saw what you have done to him. I moved toward the attic ladder. I am calling the police. Dad grabbed my arm, his grip tight. You will do no such thing. You will go back to your room, and we will discuss this in the morning like rational adults. Let go of me. I pulled my arm free. I am 20 years old. I am calling the police. And then I am calling Child Protective Services. And then I am going to make sure that everyone knows what you have done. Nathan, think about what you are doing. Think about the consequences. This will destroy our family. Everything your mother and I have worked for. Your college tuition, your future, all of it is tied to my career. If this gets out, I lose everything. We lose everything. Maybe you should have thought about that before you locked a child in the attic. I climbed down the ladder. My mother was standing in the hallway now, wearing her bathrobe, her face pale. Nathan, she said, please, let us talk about this. There is nothing to talk about. You have been keeping my brother prisoner in our attic for 10 years. That is not something we talk about. That is something I report to the authorities. He is not a prisoner, Mom said, and she was crying now. We love him. We have taken care of him. It has been so hard, Nathan. So hard to keep this secret, to manage it all. But we did it for him, to protect him. You did it to protect yourselves, I said. You did it because you cared more about your reputation than your own child. I went to my bedroom and grabbed my phone. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely dial 911. The operator answered. 911. What is your emergency? I need to report child abuse, I said, my voice breaking. There is a 10-year-old boy who has been locked in an attic. He needs help. He needs medical attention. I need someone to come right now. I gave the operator the address. She asked me questions. I answered them as best I could, my eyes never leaving my parents, who stood in the doorway watching me with expressions of horror and betrayal. "Officers are on their way," the operator said. "Please stay on the line with me." The police arrived 12 minutes later. 2 officers, a man and a woman. My parents tried to turn them away at the door, tried to say it was all a misunderstanding, a family dispute. But I had already told the 911 operator everything, and the police were not leaving without seeing the attic. I led them upstairs. Ethan was still huddled in the corner, still rocking, still silent. The female officer, Officer Rodriguez, according to her name tag, made a sound when she saw him, a sharp intake of breath. "Jesus Christ," she said softly. She approached Ethan slowly, talking to him in a gentle voice. He did not respond, but he did not seem as frightened of her as he had been of me, maybe because she was speaking quietly, not yelling like I had been. Or maybe he was just in shock. The male officer was asking my parents questions downstairs. I could hear Dad's voice, controlled and lawyer calm, explaining that they had been caring for their special needs child at home, that there was nothing illegal about that this was all being blown out of proportion by their dramatic son. An ambulance arrived. Paramedics came up to assess Ethan. He did not want to be touched, pulled away when they tried to examine him, made distressed sounds. But they were patient. They checked him over as best they could without causing him more trauma. "He is malnourished," one of the paramedics said quietly to Officer Rodriguez. "Dehydrated. His muscle tone suggests he does not get much physical activity. He needs to go to the hospital." "Can he communicate at all?" Rodriguez asked. "He is nonverbal. Autistic, I would guess from the behavior patterns. But I am not a specialist." More police arrived, and then a woman in a pantsuit who introduced herself as being from Child Protective Services. She went up to the attic, came down looking grim, and had a long conversation with the officers. My parents were separated and questioned. I was questioned. I told them everything I knew, which was not much. I had discovered Ethan tonight. I had no idea he existed before this. I thought my brother had died as a baby. "And your parents told you he died?" the CPS worker asked. "Yes. 10 years ago. They said he was born premature and did not survive." "Did they have a funeral? Did you see a death certificate?" "I was 10. They told me there was a small family service before I was old enough to understand. I never questioned it. Why would I? They were my parents. I trusted them." The CPS worker made notes. "We are going to take Ethan to the hospital for a full evaluation, and then we will need to find appropriate placement for him." "Placement? Foster care, most likely. He is going to need specialized care. Treatment for the trauma he has experienced. Assessment of his developmental level and his needs." "What about my parents?" "That is going to be up to the district attorney. What they have done is criminal. Child abuse, false imprisonment, possibly more. They will likely be arrested." I watched as paramedics carefully coaxed Ethan out of the corner. He did not want to go. He made sounds of distress, tried to pull away, but they were gentle and persistent. They wrapped him in a blanket and carried him down the ladder. He was so thin, so small for 10 years old. As they brought him through the front door toward the ambulance, he made eye contact with me for just a second. There was something in his eyes. Confusion maybe, or hope, or maybe I was just projecting what I wanted to see. My parents were arrested that night, handcuffed in their own home, and put into the back of police cars. My mother was crying. My father was silent, his face a stone mask. The neighbors were all awake now, standing on their porches, watching the drama unfold. The perfect Pierce family reputation, destroyed in one night. I gave my statement to the police. I answered every question. And then, when the sun was coming up and the last police car had driven away, I sat alone in the living room of my childhood home and tried to process what had just happened. I had a brother who had been alive this whole time, a brother my parents had locked away like he was a shameful secret instead of a human being who deserved love and care, and I had been oblivious. For 10 years, I had lived in this house, slept in a bedroom directly below where Ethan was being kept, and I had never known, had never suspected, had never heard him until last night. How was that possible? How had they kept him so quiet? Had they drugged him? Had they trained him to be silent through fear? The questions made me sick. The next few days were a blur. The story hit the news. Local attorney and wife arrested for hiding autistic son in attic. It was everywhere. Local news, national news, social media. Everyone had an opinion. Most of those opinions were about how monstrous my parents were. Some were about how people did not understand the stress of raising a special needs child. A few blamed me for turning in my own parents. I was staying with my best friend Jake again, just like during the trust fund situation. His family had basically adopted me during crisis situations. But this was different. This was not about money or betrayal of me. This was about a child who had suffered for years while I lived in ignorance. My parents made bail. Dad's lawyer friends helped with that. They were not allowed to contact me, which was fine because I had no desire to speak to them. But they called Jake's house looking for me, left messages that I deleted without listening to. Ethan was in the hospital for 5 days. They ran every test imaginable: physical health, mental health, developmental assessments. The results were heartbreaking. He was severely malnourished. His bones showed signs of inadequate nutrition during critical growth periods. His teeth had cavities from poor dental care. He had pressure sores from sitting too long in one position, muscle atrophy from lack of exercise. Developmentally, he was functioning at about a 4-year-old level, despite being 10. He was nonverbal, which the doctors said might be from the autism or might be from lack of stimulation and language exposure. It was impossible to know. He had never been to school, never had speech therapy or occupational therapy, or any of the interventions that could have helped him. He was terrified of most adults, especially men. He did not know how to play. He did not know how to interact with other children. He had spent 10 years in an attic with minimal human contact, and it showed in every aspect of his development. But he was not broken. The doctors were clear about that. With proper care, with therapy and education and love, he could make progress. Maybe he would never be typical. Maybe he would always need support, but he could have a life, a real life, not whatever nightmare my parents had condemned him to. The CPS worker, whose name was Helen Martinez, called me 3 days after the arrest. "Nathan, I wanted to update you on your brother's case. How is he? Physically, he is improving. He is eating regularly, which is good. Emotionally, he is struggling. He does not understand what has happened. The hospital environment is overwhelming for him. We are working with a specialist in trauma and autism to help him adjust. What happens next? We need to find placement for him. Ideally, a foster home experienced with special needs children. But Nathan, I need to be honest with you. Placements for older children with significant needs are hard to find. Most foster parents are not equipped to handle a child with Ethan's level of need. So, what does that mean? It might mean a group home, institutional care. It is not ideal, but sometimes it is the only option available. I felt sick. After 10 years locked in an attic, you are going to put him in an institution? I did not say it was what I wanted. I said it might be what is available. The foster care system is overwhelmed, Nathan, especially for kids like Ethan. What if I took him? The words were out of my mouth before I had fully thought them through. But once I said them, I knew they were right. What? Helen said, "What if I took him? I am his brother. I am 20 years old. Can I be his guardian?" Nathan, do you understand what you would be taking on? Ethan is going to need years of intensive therapy. He is going to need special education. He might need lifelong support. You are 20 years old and in college. Your entire life is ahead of you. He is my brother, I said. He has already lost 10 years because of what my parents did. I am not going to let him lose more by putting him in some institution where he is just another case file. If I can be his guardian, I want to try. There was a long pause. It is not a simple process. We would need to do a home study, background checks, assess your ability to provide care, and you would need to prove you can support him financially. College students are not typically approved as guardians. My grandfather left me money, a trust fund. I have access to it. I can support him. Another pause. Let me talk to my supervisor. This is not a typical situation, but if you are serious about this, we can explore it. I was serious, more serious than I had ever been about anything in my life. Ethan was my brother. He deserved a chance at a real life, and I was going to make sure he got it. The next 2 months were the most difficult of my life. I withdrew from college for the semester. I could not focus on classes when my brother was in the hospital and my parents were preparing for trial. My professors were understanding, given the circumstances. I met with Helen multiple times. I filled out paperwork. I underwent background checks and home studies. I found an apartment near the hospital that was suitable for a child with special needs. 1 floor, no stairs that Ethan might have trouble with, near good schools and therapy centers. I met with doctors and therapists who specialized in autism and trauma. I learned about sensory processing disorder and stimming and meltdowns. I learned about communication boards and routine, and how to create an environment that felt safe. And I visited Ethan every day at the hospital. At first, he did not seem to recognize me. He was overwhelmed by the hospital, by the constant flow of new people, by the noise and lights and change. But I kept coming. I sat with him quietly. I did not try to force interaction. I just let him know I was there. Slowly, over days and then weeks, he started to respond to me. He would look at me when I entered the room. He would allow me to sit closer. One day, about 3 weeks after that first night, he reached out and touched my hand. Just a brief touch, like he was checking if I was real, but it felt like a miracle. The therapists taught me how to communicate with him. He could not speak, but he could understand some language. Simple phrases, clear directions. They gave me picture cards to help him express basic needs. Hungry, thirsty, bathroom, scared. I learned his patterns. The way he rocked when he was anxious. The humming sound he made when he was content. The way he would cover his ears when things got too loud. Every day I learned something new about my brother. This boy who had been a ghost story in my life for 10 years. My parents' trial was set for 4 months out. In the meantime, they were out on bail, living in our old house, preparing their defense. Their lawyer was arguing that they had been providing home care for a special needs child, that the conditions were not ideal, but were not criminal, that they had done their best in a difficult situation. It was bullshit, but it was lawyer bullshit, the kind that might actually work with a jury that did not understand autism or special needs care. The prosecution was building a case for child abuse, false imprisonment, and fraud for collecting benefits for a child they claimed had died. I was called to testify. The thought of sitting in a courtroom and testifying against my own parents should have been agonizing. Instead, I felt nothing but determination. They had done this. They had chosen to hide Ethan, to deny him a life. They deserved consequences. But first, I had to get Ethan out of the hospital and into a real home. Our home. After 2 months of evaluations and home studies and meetings, CPS approved my guardianship petition. I was young, they said. I was inexperienced. But I was Ethan's brother. I had financial resources to support him. I had educated myself about his needs, and most importantly, he had started to bond with me. In the end, that bonding made the difference. The day I brought Ethan home was both terrifying and wonderful. Helen came with us to help with the transition. We had prepared the apartment carefully. His room had a weighted blanket that the therapist said might help him feel secure. Soft lighting, a noise machine, pictures on the wall of simple, calming images. We had a visual schedule posted where he could see it, pictures showing the routine of the day. Wake up, breakfast, playtime, lunch, quiet time, dinner, bath, bed. The therapist said routine would help him feel safe. Ethan was afraid at first. New place, new smells, new sounds. He clung to the doorframe and would not come inside. I did not force him. I sat down on the floor inside the apartment and waited. After 10 minutes, he took one step inside, then another. Then he was standing in the living room, looking around with wide eyes. "This is home," I said quietly. "Your home. Our home. You are safe here." He did not respond, of course, but he started exploring slowly. He touched the couch carefully. He looked at the kitchen. He found his bedroom and stood in the doorway for a long time, just staring. That first night was hard. He did not want to sleep in his bed. He ended up on the floor of his closet, wrapped in his blanket, because that felt more like the attic he was used to. It broke my heart, but the therapist had warned me this might happen. Trauma does not go away just because the situation improves. It takes time. I slept on the floor outside his closet that night. I wanted him to know he was not alone. The next days and weeks were a learning process. Ethan needed structure. He needed routine. Any change to the schedule could trigger a meltdown. The first time I took him to the grocery store, the lights and sounds and people were too much. He dropped to the floor and screamed. People stared. Some looked sympathetic. Some looked judgmental. I learned quickly to not care what anyone thought. We started therapy 3 times a week with an autism specialist, twice a week with a trauma counselor, once a week with an occupational therapist to help with sensory issues, and daily practice at home with the communication board and routine, and slowly expanding his world. I also enrolled Ethan in a special education program. He had never been to school. The first day was a disaster. Too much change. Too many people. He refused to leave my side. But the teachers were patient and experienced. They worked with me to create a slow transition. First just sitting in the classroom for 10 minutes. Then 20. Then a full morning. It took 2 months before he could handle a full school day. But slowly, incredibly slowly, progress happened. 3 months after I brought him home, Ethan pointed to a picture on his communication board to tell me he was hungry. It was the first time he had initiated communication. I nearly cried. For months in, he started sleeping in his bed instead of the closet. Small victory, huge milestone. 5 months in, he laughed. We were playing with building blocks, something his therapist had suggested to work on fine motor skills. I built a tower and he knocked it down. I made a silly face and he laughed. The sound was rusty, like he had not used those muscles much. But it was a laugh. My parents' trial started 6 months after that night in the attic. I testified on the first day. The defense attorney tried to paint me as a rebellious son trying to hurt his parents. The prosecutor shut that down quickly with evidence of what Ethan's life had been like. The bucket used as a toilet, the malnutrition, the lack of medical care or education. The jury heard from doctors who explained Ethan's condition when he was found. They heard from teachers who explained what proper care for an autistic child should look like. They heard from neighbors who said they had no idea the Pierces had a second son. My parents both testified. Mom cried on the stand, said she had done her best, that she loved Ethan but did not know how to help him. Dad was stoic, maintained that they had provided home care that was not ideal but was not criminal. The jury was out for 2 days. When they came back, they found my parents guilty on all counts. Child abuse, false imprisonment, fraud. The judge sentenced them each to 8 years in prison, with possibility of parole after 5. I felt no satisfaction watching them being led out of the courtroom in handcuffs. Just a deep sadness for everyone involved. For Ethan, who had lost 10 years. For me, who had lost the parents I thought I knew. Even for them, for what they had become in their obsession with appearances and reputation. But mostly I felt determination. Determination to give Ethan the life he should have had from the beginning. That was 2 years ago. Ethan is 12 now. He is still nonverbal, but he uses his communication board reliably. He is in a special education classroom with an amazing teacher who understands him. He has made a friend, another autistic boy in his class who also does not speak, but who likes the same sensory toys Ethan does. He sleeps in his bed now. He eats regular meals. He takes baths without fighting. He has a doctor and a dentist, and all his teeth are fixed. He is growing, not just physically, but emotionally. He smiles more. He makes eye contact sometimes. He trusts me. It has not been easy. I am 22 years old and raising a special needs child. I had to give up a lot. I finished college online instead of living on campus. I work from home doing freelance graphic design, so I can be available for Ethan. I do not have much of a social life. Dating is complicated when you are explaining that you are a legal guardian to your younger brother who needs round-the-clock support. But I would not change it. Ethan is my brother. He deserves a family who loves him for who he is, not who wishes he was different. He deserves a life where he is not hidden away out of shame. He deserves every opportunity to grow and learn and be happy. We have a routine now. We wake up together. I make breakfast while he sets the table with his picture schedule. We get ready for school. I walk him to the bus stop and wait until he boards safely. The bus driver knows to make sure he gets to his classroom. While he is at school, I work. In the afternoons, we do therapy homework, communication exercises, sensory play, motor skills practice. Sometimes we just play. He likes building blocks and music and going to the park on quiet days when not many people are around. Evenings are for dinner and bath and bedtime routine. I read to him, even though I do not know how much he understands. He likes the sound of my voice and the routine of it. Some nights he falls asleep right away. Some nights he has nightmares and I sit with him until he calms down. It is not the life I planned when I was 18 and heading off to college, but it is a good life, an important life, a life that matters. I have not spoken to my parents since the trial. They write me letters from prison. I do not read them. Maybe someday I will be ready to hear what they have to say. Maybe I will never be ready. Either way is okay. What matters is Ethan. What matters is that he knows he is loved, that he has a home, that he has a brother who will always fight for him. Last month, something incredible happened. We were sitting at the kitchen table eating breakfast, and Ethan looked at me, really looked at me, with full eye contact, something he rarely does. And then he did something he had never done before. He reached across the table and put his hand on top of mine. Not a quick touch, but a real gesture of connection. He held my hand for almost a full minute. I realized he was trying to tell me something, that he understood, in his own way, what I had done for him, that he knew I was safe, that he knew he was home. I squeezed his hand gently. I love you, buddy. You are my brother, and I am never going to let anything bad happen to you again. He did not respond with words, but he smiled, a real smile, the kind that reaches the eyes. And for that moment, everything we had been through was worth it. The therapists say Ethan will always need support. He might never speak. He might never live independently. But he can have a good life, a happy life, a life filled with love and security and opportunities to grow. And I am going to make sure he gets that life. Because that is what brothers do. We protect each other. We fight for each other. We show up, even when it is hard, especially when it is hard. People ask me sometimes if I regret my decision to become Ethan's guardian so young. If I wish I could have had a normal 20s, with parties and spontaneity and no responsibilities. The answer is always no. This is exactly where I am supposed to be. Ethan is exactly who I am supposed to be caring for. Yes, I grew up faster than I planned. Yes, I had to sacrifice things that other people my age take for granted. But I also got something most people never find. Purpose. Real purpose. The knowledge that I am making a difference in someone's life every single day. Ethan was hidden for 10 years, locked away because he was different, because my parents valued reputation over their own child's well-being. That should never have happened. But since it did, since he went through that trauma, the least I can do is make sure the rest of his life is everything it should be. We have a tradition now. Every night before bed, I tell Ethan about his day using his picture schedule. Wake up, breakfast, school, therapy, play, dinner, bath, bed. And at the end, I always add one more thing. I point to a picture of the two of us together and I say, "And Nathan loves Ethan." Always. He does not say it back. He probably never will. But he knows. I see it in the way he reaches for my hand when he is scared, in the way he looks for me when he wakes up, in the way he trusts me to take care of him. That is enough. More than enough. It is everything. I still think about that night sometimes. The night I heard crying from the attic and decided to investigate instead of ignoring it. Everything changed because I chose to act. If I had rolled over and gone back to sleep, Ethan would still be up there, still locked away, still suffering. It terrifies me to think about, but it also reminds me that we always have a choice. When we see something wrong, we can ignore it or we can do something about it. When someone needs help, we can look away or we can step up. I am not a hero. I am just someone who found out his brother needed him and decided to show up. But maybe that is what being an adult really means. Not the age on your driver's license, or your ability to vote, or any of the legal markers we use, but the willingness to take responsibility for someone other than yourself. The courage to do what is right even when it is hard. My name is Nathan Pierce, and I am 22 years old. I am a college graduate, a freelance graphic designer, and the legal guardian of my 12-year-old brother. I did not choose this path. It chose me on a Thanksgiving night when I heard crying from an attic that should have been empty. But I would choose it again. Every single day, I would choose it again. Because Ethan is not an embarrassment. He is not broken. He is not a shameful secret to be hidden away. He is my brother. He is brave and resilient and learning to trust the world again after years of being told he did not belong in it. And if there is any meaning in what happened, any purpose in that nightmare we both lived through, it is this. Ethan finally has the life he deserves. He has a home, a family, a future. He has someone who loves him exactly as he is. That is not something I gave him. That is something he always deserved and should have always had. I just made sure he finally got it, and I will keep making sure every day for the rest of my life. Because that is what love looks like. Not the conditional love my parents offered, the kind that required you to be perfect and presentable, but real love, the kind that shows up in the middle of the night, the kind that fights for you, the kind that never, ever gives up. Ethan is my brother, and I am his. Nothing will ever change that. Thank you for listening to my story of growing up faster than I ever wanted to. I have left 2 more stories on your screen, both from young men who learned that sometimes becoming an adult does not happen at 18. It happens the moment your family needs you to be strong. Click on whichever one speaks to you. And if you want to join our community of people who understand what it is like to be forced to grow up overnight, that notification bell is waiting. Until tomorrow, remember, age is just a number, but courage defines who you really are.